Miss Transformers 96 here with another review. This time we have the Arkham City Clayface figure. So this is of course the most recent very large figure from Arkham, from the Arkham toy line. This is their largest figure to date, and so far they haven't shown anything that's coming out that's going to be larger. So this might end up being the largest Arkham figure for the entire series when it's all said and done, but we'll have to see. Overall, this was definitely a figure that was needed of an action figure treatment for quite a while now. Clayface is of course a big character and was made quite an impact on the Arkham City game, even if it was just for the ending. So this was definitely one that I was hoping that they'd make for a long time. Luckily they have delivered, and they delivered it quite well. Here is this behemoth. He is absolutely massive, and that is of course going to be one of the largest selling points of this figure, is just how crazy huge he is, of course. So yeah. Overall, just going over the actual detail here, head sculpt, the Clayface head sculpt looks really nice. I have to say, I like it a lot. Definitely, it has very much a skeleton type of vibe there to it, which is pretty cool. But it's kind of a more muscular skeleton type of look, and it has that clay type of feel, which is quite nice. He does have a moving jaw, so you can close his mouth too, which I definitely think is really awesome. And then he does have another head underneath his head. As you can see from the sides and from some angles, it does kind of peek through when you have his mouth open and hides it a bit more, but still, it is a little bit noticeable from the sides. This side isn't bad though, because the Joker head that's underneath is clay, is kind of clay on one side, this side, so it's not very noticeable. But when you take off this mask, he does have a very small Joker head underneath, which is kind of neat. This Joker head is the same size head of an average figure. I mean, this is a regular Joker head. It's not like it's larger or anything. It's so small that it does look kind of weird, and I understand that they're going for the whole thing where, he's transforming into Clayface from the Joker, which is what happens in the game. So I understand why they had like the same type of human size head, but they could have easily kind of distorted the proportions a little bit and made it look like his face was really glopping out of shape and into Clayface's face, and had the head to be a bit bigger, because this really tiny head just does look pretty strange, I must say. But the detailing on it is really great, and you do get a nice Clayface type of effect on the side. It's almost like a two-faced Joker. Pretty neat, I have to say. For just about anybody who buys this, I'm sure they will display it with the actual Clayface head, though. That is definitely going to be a selling point. Going over the actual body here, it's sculpted very nicely, as you can see. Not a ton of detail in the actual sculpting of the lines. Some pretty simple lines just going across there, but it is specked and dotted throughout the entire thing. And that's not just paint, it's actually textured that way too, so it isn't as simple as it may look on first glance, which is kind of neat, and I definitely like it a lot. Looking pretty awesome. We go to the back where we have all the crystals. This is what I would consider to be the most, controversial thing about this figure, is the crystals, because of course he really doesn't have this in the game. You can say that when Batman was throwing the kind of ice grenades on him, that it was somewhat forming this effect, but even when he was doing that, I don't think that it was this noticeable. They really took the concept of the icing and kind of ran with it, and kind of created their own type of thing in some way. So overall, I think it looks really cool. I think that overall, when they first showed it, I wasn't happy with it. I would have much rather just had the actual Clayface figure without the ice on him. But actually getting it in person, I think he might be a little bland without it, because he just has the flat brown. Obviously there's some shading in there, but there really isn't a whole lot of wow factor other than just his size. So this does help add more uniqueness, as well as just more interesting things about the figure himself. So I have grown to really like these kind of crystal formations. I think they do look cool. The color in them is really great. They've got a really nice blue that is translucent, which is pretty awesome. And then they have a really just kind of bright pearl white that's metallic almost, and just really shines and looks really cool and looks pretty realistic, I have to say, for for what it is. It looks really great. I definitely like it a lot. Now, if we go down further, the rest of the figure, as you can see, he maintains that same level of detail. He's got his hands here. They are slightly different positioned. One's more of just a regular like this, while one has kind of spread fingers like that. Overall, I think that they do look quite nice though. And then his feet are kind of you know, relatively simple, but I like the way that it's like the clay is kind of dripping down his legs, you know, and maybe his feet are even getting a little bigger because there just keeps getting more layers and layers pouring down to his feet as it drips from the rest of his body. So just kind of interesting little stuff like that. As you can see, he does have the crystals on his arms as well as his shoulders. And the crystals do come back quite far to the bottom there. He does have this little like cut that goes around his entire body where the figure was obviously in two pieces that they put it together. But because he's like clay, it really doesn't matter too much, and it's very unnoticeable too, which is kind of cool. I definitely like that a lot. Oh yeah, so now let's pause it and go over the articulation. Alright, so Clayface's articulation is pretty decent. Now, he seems to have most of the right joints. It's just the joints are not super, they don't have a ton of range of movement, unfortunately. But he does have most of the right joints, which is nice. He's got a ball-jointed head. This is obviously the Joker head that has the articulation on it. Just remove that. So, it looks side to side a bit, up and down just a tad bit. And, oops, completely dropped Clayface's head. And let me get that. But overall, it has a fair amount of movement. But considering how far forward his head is, they could have easily designed this to have a much better range of movement for the head rather than what it actually has. So, wish that they would have designed that a bit better. But overall, not too bad. He's got ball hinge shoulders that can barely go out. They do swivel 360, of course. And what's nice is, you know, a lot of the problems with the DC Direct Collectibles figures are that their joints are sometimes prone to break. My Killer Croc as well as my Mad Hatter have broken shoulders. I was able to fix them both, but still they did break on me, and I've seen countless pictures and people saying that theirs have broken too. So it's just kind of a big problem for them. Luckily, it seems that they have reinforced the joints on Clayface with metal, so that should not be a problem on this figure, which is just great. It gives you a lot of peace of mind. You know, you can move him around a lot more freely and not have to worry about that stuff. So that's really awesome. He's got swivel at the bicep. He's got a hinge swivel elbow. Let me just make sure. Yeah, it does swivel, which is nice. The hinge is very limited. Really just hinges that much. I don't really see why they couldn't have extended this joint like down here and had it hinge a lot more. Possibly they were not wanting the joint to be very visible, because the joint is, even if his arm is fully extended out, it's still like barely visible, which is kind of neat. But it would have been nice if they did give that joint a lot more range of movement, because it definitely doesn't do much. He doesn't have any torso whatsoever, which is unfortunate, and considering he's done in two places here, they could have had a swivel if they wanted to, but unfortunately they did not. He's got swivel wrists that swivel, you know, great. And then he's got ball jointed thighs, which are very nice. I mean, they go out way far, and they'll even come forward quite a bit too, so the thighs are really nice there. He's got hinge swivel knees. The hinge doesn't hinge very far. It does kind of stop there. That's about as far as you can get it. But the thigh does have such good range of movement that you can actually position his legs in a relatively dynamic pose, which is nice. Then he's got ball jointed ankles, but mostly they just swivel, so mostly just swivel there. So overall articulation is pretty decent. DC Direct really isn't known for their articulation, so it's not really a bad thing if he doesn't have the best. They could have easily designed him a bit better to have more range of movement in the head as well as the elbows and probably the knees, and then they could have added like a swivel at the waist. But overall, you're mostly gonna buy a figure from Arkham just to display, because a lot of their figures, either they have really bad articulation or their articulation is decent. There's never anyone that's like really amazing. Copperhead was probably the best articulated Arkham figure, and you know, just figures like her don't come along very often for Arkham. Alright, so now let's go over some of his accessories. He does come with a few. Like I said, there's the Joker head underneath. I've already went over that. You can also switch out his hand here. It comes out very easily. That's one thing I was very happy about with these accessories, is that I thought that there would definitely be a struggle to interchange them because the joints would be so tight and whatnot. But luckily they're not, which is just awesome. He comes with this axe hand, which just goes right in, you know, very easy, like I said. Really quite a nice accessory, as you can see. He's got It's quite an extension on his arm too, and then he's got the big axe. He did have this in the game, and he swung the axe, and Batman has to jump over it. He did that multiple times. So it's pretty nice that he does come with the axe. It does look quite cool. Because of his limited elbow articulation. It's a little hard to get him in a really nice, natural-looking pose with that axe, but still, it is of course great to have. And the axe is detailed as well as the rest of the figure. So. It doesn't look strange on him, it looks completely natural, so I do like that. Like I said, very easy to replace it. And then he does come with this arm, and this was a really cool accessory. This is one that I didn't know actually came with him until he started to come out and the box pictures were released, but it's a mid-transformation Joker arm. So as you can see up here, you have a massive Joker sleeve, which looks awesome, really well painted, and I love the fact that it's got clay on it, like it's turning into Clayface. And then you do have this long cylinder of clay, and then his hands where his bone is sticking out too. Really awesome. I mean, that just looks sick right there. He does have a wire in this, so you can bend it. It's a little stiff, so you can't do much more than that type of a movement. It's not super dynamic. And then he has some wire in the beginning of the finger. I think it only goes to about there on each finger, so you can pose them a bit. Overall, I would have liked them to just do this arm, but have it just be pre-posed with no articulation other than at the shoulder. I think that would have been a lot better than the kind of the gimmick of the wire in the rubber. But that's just me. People might enjoy this. To plug that into his body, you'll turn them around, and this crystal right here can be pushed in. You do have to use some force on it, and I like to have it closer to me, because you need to push in, and then when you have it at a pretty far point, then you can pull out his arm. It's a pretty simple thing to do, but I am going to stop it just so that I'm not stuck trying to do this on camera when my arms are way out in front of me. So let me change that arm out. Another accessory that you get is Talia al Ghul's sword. Overall, this is a cool one to include, and obviously was in the game quite frequently, and Batman would pick it up and, slice him up a bit and then stab him back in the back with the sword. So overall, this was a nice accessory that he came with. He does have a little slot on his back that it fits into very easily. You can remove it just as easily, and it is a full and nice sword that can be used with your Batman. He can hold it. Overall, I believe it's the exact same one that came with the Talia figure. I don't have the Talia figure though. It's one of the few Arkham figures I don't have, but I would assume that it is the exact same one, so I would, it's definitely going to be in scale, obviously. So overall, nice little extra accessory. Alright, so here he is with the mid-transformation Joker arm on. As you can see, it looks very cool. It's very long. Because, it is somewhat limited of our posability, there's not a ton that you can do with it, but it's still a really neat idea, and it completely adds to the Joker face as well. So I am very happy that they did include it, and it looks really good, I have to say. I can't imagine many people actually displaying him like this, but it is definitely a cool option, and it's relatively easy to change out his arms too, which is definitely really great, and something that I was worried about, so I am very happy to see that it's really just not a worry when you actually get the figure in person. Alright, so here's a size comparison with the Arkham Clayface compared to the Mattel Clayface, as well as the Arkham Batman. So overall, he's quite huge, of course. Just, the Mattel one is really just in here to see the kind of differences between the two companies' Clayfaces. Obviously, the DC Direct one is far superior, but that's for obvious reasons. As you can see him there with Batman, I would consider him in scale. From what I saw from the game, and I did go rewatch, a portion of that game footage, and it seems like it's in pretty good scale. I must say, I'm very happy about that, and I can always, kind of trust that DC Direct will always do, in-scale products at least, so that's very nice. And he does look great with them. I've taken a few photos, posed them, fighting each other, and even though they both have limited articulation, you can still pull off some really nice looks. The Talia sword fits in Batman's hand pretty well, so, it's at least well enough to take pictures with, so I had a ton of fun with, Batman on Clayface's back, with the knife and the whole thing. So you can check out my Instagram for those pictures. I'll be posting them quite soon if I haven't already. Overall, I think it's a really great scale between Batman and Clayface. Alright, so here's a size comparison between Clayface and Solomon Grundy, the two behemoths from the Arkham series. Of course, there is Titan Joker as well. I do have Titan Joker, but he's, not as big as these two. These two are definitely going to be the biggest ones, so I definitely want to compare them. As you can see, they're both massive. You get, I'd say, close to just about the same mass with both. Clayface is slightly taller and maybe has slightly more bulk, but it's definitely debatable because the Solomon Grundy he's definitely slightly shorter than Clayface, but not by much at all. And then he does have an insane amount of bulk, so it's really hard to tell which one is actually bigger. I think it's Clayface, but it's not by very much, I must say. Overall, though, they look awesome together. And throw in, Titan Joker, the Killer Croc, the Banes, and you've got a sick collection. So far, I have all that, so I definitely like I definitely like my Arkham portion of my collection because it's just got so many crazy, bizarre, and huge characters in it. Overall, they look really great together, and of course, they are in scale. So overall, this Clayface figure is really awesome. He's a pretty cool character. Now, when you look at the Arkham games as a whole, just all of them, didn't make a huge impact on the entire series. But in the game that he was in, he was definitely the secret character and the one that made quite a splash. So definitely enjoy this character in general. And then the figure definitely did the character justice. Now, depending on whether you like the crystals or not, that's up to you. But I definitely like them, and I think that they add something really cool to him and make him more interesting than he would have been without them. So I definitely am happy about them. My only real complaint is the fact that the Clayface head doesn't go on to the Joker head very well at all. I would have much preferred two separate heads that you can just swap out. That would have been a lot easier than this crappy mask that you get that goes over the Joker. It doesn't even go over that well too, so you can kind of still see a little bit of Joker's face. It's very annoying, and it's fallen off a bunch of times. It really annoys me. Now, when he's just on a shelf, if you're not touching him, it won't fall off at all, so you don't have to worry about that. But if you're doing anything with this guy, chances are the freaking mask is gonna fall off. So I am not a big fan of that, and it could have been easily fixed by just two separate head sculpts. That would have been a lot better. But overall, that is a relatively small complaint. He is a really awesome figure. He does retail for $100. I was able to pick him up on eBay for $85 though, and that's, with shipping. So you can definitely, cut back on the price with this guy because he doesn't go for full retail at the moment, which is nice. So overall, really great figure. Would highly recommend it, and looks just great in your Arkham collection. Definitely, obviously, is going to stand out as well. So it's a great figure. Would highly recommend it.